Life Curriculum, learning to address impairment and fatigue to enhance patient safety.
There is an enormous contrast between the challenge of training residents with problems and the satisfaction of training well-suited residents. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a system that could flawlessly determine the qualities and suitability of each resident at the recruitment stage? Since we don't live in a perfect world, this is probably not going to happen, but there are some very good methods that significantly improve our chances of prediction. These methods involve digging deeper than the academic evaluations. Studies and experience suggest that the traditional academic criteria are not sufficient for predicting clinical performance of residents. Evaluating letters of reference is somewhat helpful, but the information gained from a well-designed and well-structured interview can be the best basis for decisions. The goals of recruiting are to match the goals and attributes of your department and program with those of your applicants. To accomplish this, you need to design a process for recruitment as well as policies for selecting your applicants. The first step is to identify the culture of your program, define the goals of your department or program, and make sure that they are broadcasted to interested applicants. Some departments have a formal mission statement that addresses these issues. This information could be included on your department website, for instance, and should begin with the overarching principles or philosophy of the residency program. Then, the types of healthcare or procedures for which your department has been recognized, or the types of skills in the approach to healthcare that your department is noted for should be included. Beyond the information that is disseminated about the mission of your department or program, you need to define what specific characteristics best suit your program. Questions that may help you define these include: how does your program define success? What were the accomplishments of former residents that hold the most value for your department or program? What is the real culture within your department or program, and what does it take to survive and thrive? What behaviors are your curricula designed to promote? What knowledge, attitudes, or skills do residents specifically need to be able to enter your program? What is the scholarship demand in terms of research and paper presentations? Questions that address your department's technical standards might include: what skills do your residents need to be able to perform? How should they be able to process information? Is it necessary for them to be able to stand for long periods of time? Do they need to multitask and make quick decisions, or can they reflect thoughtfully prior to decision making? These are all questions that can be used to get at the so-called hidden curriculum within your department or program. A pattern may emerge if you consider the attributes of residents who have been very successful in your program and compare these to residents who have struggled. The criteria for acceptance to any residency program includes items such as having passed the USMLE or COMLEX examinations and fulfillment of curriculum requirements, acknowledgement of honors in one or more clerkships, or membership in Alpha Omega Alpha, research productivity, and/or demonstration of leadership and community service may be desirable. All programs look for learners and team players who are able to apply their knowledge towards tasks that require decision-making, and for personalities that are high-achieving, altruistic, honest, creative, innovative, amicable, flexible, resilient, respectful, compassionate, organized, and professional. Resilience is defined in the generation section, and professionalism is defined in the legal section of this CD-ROM. It's a tall order to find all of this in one person, and it may be worthwhile for you to decide and even prioritize which behavioral characteristics are most important for your program before you design your strategy for a candidate search.
Materials that you have to evaluate for each applicant are the application, personal statement, CV, letters of reference, dean's letter, transcripts, scores from the third-year clinical clerkship, any certifications or information from past professional experience. Additionally, results from Steps 1 and 2 of the USMLE or the COMLEX for osteopathic medicine, ECFMG certification for foreign medical graduates, and the criminal background check should be considered. Of these, the letters of reference, CV, and results from the clerkship may provide some insight into characteristics of the applicant. As you are no doubt aware, letters of reference frequently suffer from grade inflation. In other words, they should appear as overly positive and almost glowing, especially when group interactions and clinical performance are discussed. If these subjects are not discussed, or if the performance is rated as adequate or satisfactory, then this should serve as a red flag that there may be a problem with the applicant. Overly brief letters should also raise concerns. In other words, it's not so much what recommendation letters say, it's what they don't say that deserves attention. The dean's letter, too, is almost always overly positive. The only clues you can possibly derive from it are to read through individual clerkship comments, if any, and to note if the comments were edited. Pay particular attention to any negative comments that involve time management or communication and team interaction. In the CV, look for mention of leadership or volunteer activities that the applicant may have been involved in. While these items serve as pluses for the applicant, any breaks or lapses in training or employment can be considered red flags. Results from the third-year clerkship can be used as an indication of clinical competence, especially if the preceptor was able to directly observe each student during their patient interactions. But the interview and the process leading up to it can be the source of the most information about a candidate's behaviors and attributes. Therefore, it is critical to have your interviews carefully designed to be able to glean the most information. Your goal is to find out as much as you can about past behavior and attitudes of your applicants. The premise for this is that past ability predicts future success, or on the flip side, that past misbehavior can predict future problems. Studies confirm that physicians with disciplinary issues at the level of the state licensing board had issues much earlier in their training, even as far back as medical school. Many departments have instituted a night before the interview social event that involves the applicants and the current residents, but usually does not involve faculty. This type of function allows the applicants a pleasant and informal introduction to the program, while maximizing peer interaction, with the potential for valuable feedback from your current residents.
On the interview day, you need to have decided which interview methods to incorporate in your interview process. These decisions can be approached by asking the following questions. Should the interview be structured, asking a standard set of questions of every candidate, or unstructured? Should it be performed as a set of group interviews or individual interviews? What types of questions are the most revealing? How can you uncover the most information from each question? These questions can only be answered when you know what you want to get out of the interview. If you need to find out how well a future resident would deal with different personality characteristics while working in a team, a group interview with several of your current residents might be the best method. If you want to find out how a candidate would deal with situations that are personally difficult, you may want to stage it as an individual interview with a faculty member who is adept at conversing with beginning residents. The individual interview should probably always be used by the program director, the department chair, and the potential resident's direct supervisor. The group interview is used when time is short and there are multiple interviewers, or for less formal situations such as meal times. Often, an applicant will express things that are much more revealing when they are in a less formal setting. Similarly, some applicants will be much more forthcoming when interviewed by residents or treated to a meal. Asking consistent questions of every applicant definitely saves time and allows each interviewer the ability to directly compare applicants. However, the less formal group interviews probably stay fresher and are more enjoyable if they are unstructured, where each member of the group comes up with a question of interest.
All interviewers, whether they are faculty or residents, should be coached on the types of questions they should be asking, as well as the types of questions that are inappropriate to ask. The types of questions that have been demonstrated to be the most revealing are behavior-focused questions. These questions are designed to focus on a particular characteristic or behavior. To test for communication skills, for example, the question could be, "Give me an example of the most difficult interaction you've had with a supervising resident." Or, "What's the hardest thing you've ever taught someone?" A question about honesty could be, "Tell me about how you would answer a question that a patient asks you and you are unsure of the answer." A question about being a team player could be, "Tell me about a time when you went out of your way to help a team member." You can find sample questions for testing other behaviors in the additional references box at the left bottom corner of your screen. The key to asking these questions is to follow up with further probe questions if the answer you receive is incomplete, theoretical, or vague. Follow-up questions should be phrased as asking for more explanation of a situation, the action that the person took within that situation, and then what was the outcome or the result of that person's actions. Examples of these questions can be found under the STAR heading in the Additional References box.
Questions that are inappropriate include questions regarding family planning, marital status, or birth control. Obviously, there should be no questions about race, religion, or sexual orientation. Questions about medical history or disability are also unacceptable, and interviewers may not ask if applicants have previously requested or received reasonable accommodations. However, it is legitimate for you to know if the applicant has a disability that will restrict his or her performance in a program. Therefore, you may ask if the applicant can perform, with or without reasonable accommodation, the essential requirements and/or functions of the residency program, or if the applicant has any condition that would prevent him or her from completing the program. An example of an inappropriate question would be, do you have a seizure disorder? But you could say, our program requires frequent changes in shifts, some nights, some days, often in the same week. Our residents may work up to 80 hours per week. Breaks during work hours are possible, but not able to be scheduled in advance. This makes meals and downtime erratic. Our specialty requires multitasking with complex patients and the need to analyze a great deal of patient data simultaneously and efficiently. Do you anticipate issues with any of this? As soon as the interview is complete, it is important to immediately retrieve all interviewers' comments and any other feedback. Your program should have a standardized method for interviewers to rate applicants' answers to questions. The faculty are not the only interviewers that can provide valuable feedback. Current residents should also be involved in the interview process, and sometimes members of the office staff can provide insight about applicant behaviors or characteristics. These groups frequently see a different side of the applicant than do the faculty. Information you may be able to retrieve from your office staff would be, how organized was the applicant when he or she was on the phone or in writing? How flexible was the applicant if put on hold or asked to call back a second time? How did the applicant respond to any glitches in the schedule, such as a changed or canceled airline flight? How did the applicant interact with office staff or other residents while waiting or on a conducted tour? Your support staff can be a good source of information, as applicants may behave differently around them than they would around you, the program director. Rude behavior to your staff is probably a good reason to keep an applicant off your match list. In summary, these methods for recruiting and interviewing residents should assist in recruiting the right applicants and avoiding future problem residents. They maximize your chance for success. However, sometimes it just isn't possible to avoid recruiting residents who have problems. Sometimes cognitive problems, including insufficient knowledge base, test-taking difficulties, or learning disabilities are so subtle that they may be difficult to detect during the interview process. Other problems that can be imperceptible at first are affective problems such as unacceptable work ethic, lack of compassion or respect, impairment, or psychomotor problems that prevent attaining the proper level of technical skill or stamina. Sometimes individuals may perform well as a student, but lack the right stuff for making the leap to the independence and specific competencies required of residents. Sometimes the person has simply made the wrong career choice. These problems may be detected as substandard performance or the inability to progress. If these problems do occur, there should be clear policies for corrective action discussed in further detail in the legal section of this CD-ROM. Situational issues such as change in marital status, child rearing, or restrictive health conditions can lead to stress that can impair performance, at least for a while. The main point in selecting applicants is to trust your instincts, even if you are the only one to have misgivings. Don't assume anything. If you have any questions about a person's past performance, call the past program directors or employers to see if you can glean any additional information. Call department heads that you know at other institutions to ask if they had the same feelings about this applicant or if they know anything about the medical program that this applicant is coming from. It is okay to not accept someone that you are just not sure about. If you have reservations, it may be better to keep the individual off the match list. Remember, anyone on your match list could end up matching in your program. Make sure you would be happy training each person you rank. In the end, it is necessary to keep your program in mind when deciding if it is better and easier on everyone involved to be unmatched than to be matched with someone who isn't optimal.
Amanda, I understand you're from Pennsylvania. I'm also from that state and will be glad to get to talk to another Pennsylvanian.
Why, yes, it's still my favorite state.
So, how would you see yourself fitting within our residency program?
Well, I would be a good match because I have always seen myself as training to become a surgeon, ever since I was 7, and my father explained to me that it was a surgeon who had removed my mother's cancer.
We have a very rigorous program, and we need healthy trainees. You wouldn't have any sort of medical condition that would make it impossible for you to finish the program, would you?
Well, no, I don't think so.
And how about kids? Are you planning on having any?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not even married yet.
Sarah, I see on your comment sheet that you were not very impressed with Amanda Nelson from her interview.
No. She seemed evasive answering the questions I asked.
Did you use the suggested questions?
Yes, but she couldn't even tell me how she would fit into the program. I also couldn't find out if she would be a risk to the program in terms of taking time off or starting a family. She seemed very closed.
Dr. Conley, are you not aware that those types of questions are totally inappropriate? You may not be. Let's get together soon, and we'll talk about it, okay?
There are several serious flaws with Dr. Conley's interview of Ms. Nelson. First, while it is true that Ms. Nelson did not provide a direct answer to Dr. Conley's question of how she would fit in the program, Dr. Conley did not follow up to try to get a real answer to the question. The other glaring missteps were that Dr. Conley asked Ms. Nelson personal questions that were unacceptable. The next vignette is an example of a better interview that produces appropriate and revealing responses from the candidate.
Amanda, I understand that you're from Pennsylvania. I'm also from that state and will be glad to get to talk to another Pennsylvanian.
Why, yes, it's still my favorite state. What part of the state are you from?
The Northwest corner. Now, how would you see yourself fitting within our residency program?
Well, I would be a good match because I've always seen myself as training to become a surgeon, ever since I was 7 and my father explained to me that it was a surgeon that had removed my mother's cancer.
Well, that sounds like a good motivation. Why this program?
Well, I'm attracted to this program because of the opportunities for learning about new technologies with robotic surgery. And I'm interested in how this program seems able to combine new and old ways of practicing medicine.
Oh. Well, what would you see as your niche within the program?
Well, I'm not sure that I can foresee my niche as of yet, but I can say that I'm a quick learner and I enjoy challenging situations.
Great. Well, can you tell me about a specific incident where you were faced with a challenge and how you approached it?
Yes. When I was in the Outward Bound program learning how to rock climb. My boyfriend at the time found himself in a very precarious position, and even though I was the furthest one away from him, I was able to figure out the steps for rescuing him, and I was able to direct the others to a successful rescue.
Had you ever done anything like that before?
Oh no, it was my first time. I had very little experience with rock climbing, but I was able to apply some of the skills that I had learned when I was an EMS volunteer in my hometown.
Great. Well, can you tell me about a time where you were faced with a challenge that you weren't able to successfully solve and what you did about it?
That's a tough one. I'll have to think about it for a second.
In this scene, the interviewer, Dr. Conley, let the social interaction go a little bit further. She was also not dissuaded when her question was not responded to, but pushed for further information and follow-up. Dr. Conley asked multiple questions about the incident to try to establish if this incident was an example of established behavior or a single episode. She replaced unacceptable questions with ones that would give her insight into the applicant's character.